So you've got an old Minolta camera and lens. Can't help you with the camera. The lens can be converted to your modern day Canon DSLR. And the first question is it worth doing? Yes. The roses, while this photograph was being taken, a little bee landed on one of the leaves. Let's zoom in on the bee, cropping away about 95% of the original photo, and it's still sharp and clear. I was totally impressed with this lens camera combination. I don't know if it could get any better. You have three options available to you. The first option is an adapter with corrective optics in it. The drawback to this type of adapter is that it somewhat degrades the image quality by robbing a little bit of light and adding an extra piece of glass in the optical path. Other than that, it's probably the easiest route to go. All you really need is a credit card for this. The second option, without any optics in it, is basically an extension tube adapting your Minolta SR mount to the Canon EF mount. It says EOS on it, and that stands for Electro-Optical System. It really has nothing to do with the mounting. It refers to the camera lens communication in the Canon cameras. The last option is the do-it-yourself M42 method. 42, the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. This is an M42 adapter. The M stands for metric, the 42 is the diameter, and it has a thread pitch of 1 thread per millimeter. The M42 mounting was used by Pentax and a few other cameras. The M42 is probably the cheapest way to go, but it produces the best results. Actually, the very best results. The problem is the Canon lenses are set for a registration distance of 44 millimeters. The Minolta camera is 43.5 millimeters, a mere half a millimeter off. And this is what we're going to do, is readjust the lens to fit the Canon 44 millimeter registration distance. To do this, we just simply move the lens a half a millimeter closer to the film plane of the Canon. The blue line shows roughly how much material you'll have to remove from the back of the lens in order to get this to work. Orient the lens with the white diamond towards you, and note that it is sitting in a paper dinner plate. This is so that all these little tiny parts don't go flying everywhere. Now, right above the diamond is the first screw that we need to remove. It's one of the long screws. We leave the short ones in there for now. So take out these 4 screws and then remove the mounting and the spacer ring at the same time. See the empty screw holes? Those are the screws that have to be removed. Now that little pin, zoom in on that. That little pin can stay right where it is. It's not going to be in the way of anything. Now remove the aperture ring, and be alert, there's a little tiny steel ball that's going to fall out of there. This is the reason for the dinner plate. Now remove the remaining 4 short screws and lift the SR mount off the spacer ring, and there's going to be a lot of little tiny parts falling out of there. We don't need those little parts, but you don't want them bouncing across the floor. So now we're down to 3 parts. Let's focus on the aperture ring. It has a little tab on it. That has to be removed. Just simply cut it off with the dikes. Oops. That's short for diagonal side cutters. And sand or file the remaining parts down smooth. So now we introduce the M42 adapter. Take note of the index locking pinhole that's already in the M42 adapter. So now we start on adapting the adapter. The threads are going to be in the way of that little pin that was sticking up, so we have to remove the threads. Remove just enough metal that all the threads disappear. This is halfway done here. all the threads are completely gone. At this point, the M42 adapter is no longer an M42 adapter. It's simply an EF mounting flange. You can do this without a lathe with your Dremel tool, but rigidly clamp down the M42 adapter so that it doesn't move around while you're trying to work on it, and just simply whittle away at the threads with your Dremel tool in the spot where that pin would be. Next, we got to drill the mounting holes. Centering your SR mount on the M42 adapter and line up one hole with the index pin hole of the adapter. And clamp everything down really good on your drill press and drill the 4 holes. Next, we need to create a screw channel. I'm using a little mini mill here with an 1/8 inch diameter end mill. Take off just enough metal that you have a nice flat pad for the screw head. The adapter is very thin and you can very easily just bust right on through it. So this is going to take a little bit of care. Now you can do this on a drill press or even by hand, but clamp down your work first. Here's the M42 adapter with the 4 holes drilled in it. Now we need to countersink the holes so that the screw heads fit down in there really nice. And I do this by hand because it's so thin and it's so easy to remove too much metal, so I just do it by hand. To confirm that the screw heads are countersinked enough, use a straight edge and feel if there's any part of it sticking up above the mounting flange. Now if these screws stick up, they're made out of steel and they will gouge into your camera's mounting. Next is the spacer ring. This drawing here shows a cross section of the before and after spacer ring, and I take my measurements with the calipers like that instead of the actual inside of the... It's just easier to do it this way, and all you really need to do is keep track of how much metal you're removing. So we take a measurement and keep notes so you know where you're starting from and your progress and how much metal you're taking off, etc., etc. And get a measurement of your EF mounting ring flange. It's no longer an M42 adapter. From this point on, all of our measurements are in inches. 1 millimeter equals 39 thousandths of an inch, roughly. Divide that by 2 and we come up with 19 thousandths of an inch. So what we need to do is take the thickness of the adapter and add that to the 1/2 millimeter measurement of 19 thousandths, and that's how much metal has to be removed from the spacer. However, the numbers here don't always match up with reality. There are a lot of variables involved here, and I'm using my camera to actually check to see if the lens will infinity focus. I found that 135 thousandths of an inch is very close. Now we start reducing the thickness of the spacer ring. It's mounted on a lathe. You don't need a lathe to do this. You can use a flat surface such as a sheet of glass and a piece of sandpaper taped down to it and remove your metal that way. However, the lathe works faster and I get better results with it. Halfway done. Here the spacer ring has been reduced to about 137 thousandths of an inch. Keep track of your progress, taking measurements every now and then, and use the sandpaper to take off all the machine cutting tool burrs, and then use some 800 grit sandpaper to polish it. So I stopped on the lathe at 136 and a half thousandths of an inch, and I'm going to test it that way before I shave any more metal off, because it's really difficult to shave it back on. Okay, ready for the reassembly of the lens. The little steel ball goes in that hole right there, and I use this Lubriplate grease Get a cotton swab and put a really thin coat of grease on the inside of the aperture ring, and add just a little bit of grease to that hole where the detent ball goes. That will hold it in place while you work on it. There's the aperture detent ball held in place with some of that grease. Line up the little aperture tabs in the back first, and then use a small screwdriver to tuck that little detent ball down underneath the aperture ring. Now install the spacer ring, and now your EF mount. Take note of the alignment here. One screw hole lines up with the diamond. The screw hole with the index pin hole in it is off to the right side by 90 degrees, and the red dot on the EF mount and the lens match up pretty close. Here's an example of what kind of performance you can expect out of this lens. Let's zoom in on that little section right there, and it's still just as sharp and clear. It's truly amazing what this lens can do. There's the finished lens. Let's take it outside and test it. Here is the camera, a Canon EOS Rebel T3i with the Rokkor 58mm f1.4 lens that we just modified, mounted to the camera with a filter and lens hood added to it. We'll check it for infinity focus. That's, after all, the big deal here, trying to get the lens to infinity focus. If it doesn't quite get to infinity, then you need to reduce the thickness of the spacer ring a little more. If it goes past infinity, then you've taken too much off, and you might have to either make a new ring or add a shim to it. Using these lenses does take a little getting used to. It's more like working a film camera from the old days, because there's nothing automatic about it. You have to actually think about what you're doing. Thanks for sitting through this with me, and I wish you success with your lens conversion.